Welcome to Community Church, Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Jacqueline Luck. And it's a joy to be with you this morning, to see so many wonderful faces. I'm so glad you're here. So who are we at Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly announcements, which are in your emails under Community Matters. Other than I'll mention that we have a congregational meeting June the 5th. You especially want to be here for that, right after the service. We have Laura Miller, our board president, has a special announcement she wants to share with us.
She promoted me too fast. I'm only vice president right now. But I will be president June 5th. Our current president, Kathy Larimer, is on a well-deserved vacation. So as her number 2 person, I do have the privilege and pleasure to introduce Stacy Mitchell. She is going to be our incoming minister for the coming year. And this is going to be a 1-year contract position with the possibility of more. But under the current circumstances with the UUA, that is all that can be done right now. But again, possibility for more. She will be starting part-time in August and then full-time in September after fulfilling her current contract with chaplaincy here in the New Orleans area. Stacy has many years of valuable experience in a variety of fields and positions. She received her Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York. She has been affiliated with several UU churches in New Jersey, New York, and Portland, Oregon. She has also been executive board member for International Fellowship of Reconciliation, and she was board president of Centro Mujeres, which is a member group of the United Nations. She also has worked in finances, social justice, and environmental activism, all of which, of course, will be extremely valuable for us as she becomes our minister. Thank you. With no further ado, I hope you'll join me in giving a warm welcome to our incoming minister, Stacy Mitchell.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and start to get to know some of you that I haven't had a chance to over the last few months. I love living here in New Orleans and have loved getting to know this congregation in the couple times that I've been here offering sermons and as an audience or congregational member, and really looking forward to the sermon from your guest minister today. So one of the things that I look forward to is getting to know you. So I'll have some office hours in August as I start, and welcoming to meet some of you one-on-one. Anyone who would like to do that, I'm really interested in learning programs that this congregation is interested in engaging in. I will be personally offering a couple meditation classes and exploring areas of social justice and religious education, family and adult programs that might be of interest to you. And so please reach out to me to learn more about that. And I think of the words of Howard Thurman, not ask what the world needs, but what brings you alive, because that's what the world needs now, is people who have come alive. And so I hope to explore what that means for each of us individually, collectively, and as a community here in New Orleans. And again, looking very forward to working with all of you. So thank you so much.
We are very lucky and happy to have Reverend Stacy join us, and I know it's going to be a great year, and I hope more than that, and so we welcome you. Let's see, I had another announcement. That's right. Liz Trotter asked me to announce there'll be no coffee this morning because we're having to mask. And hopefully, we'll handle this and not have to mask again soon. We've been through tough times. And it's so wonderful to just see you here. And I hope those of you that are listening and that are members of the congregation or friends will come join us, even if we have to mask, so that we can grow the community spirit within this congregation. It's so hard to do over the airwaves. So please come and join us. We have more today than I think we've had in a long time, and that's just marvelous. So welcome, welcome. Our speaker today is Khalida Lloyd. We're also very lucky to have her with us. She, Khalida Nicole Lloyd, it writes to me that she'd like me to share with you. She is a believer, an attorney, a community organizer, a racial equity consultant and speaker, but most importantly, a reconciler. Khalida is a community organizer with Together New Orleans, working with Community Church Unitarian Universalist and other congregations in District A and C to build power and identify local winnable issues to fight for and win those issues. Khalida is also the founder of Mission Reconcile, a faith-based racial reconciliation nonprofit created to bring together predominantly single-race culture churches to talk about race. Sounds like we should sign up for that program. That would be lovely. Racism and create organic relationships through facilitated programs. Khalida aims to lead in love, truth, and by the power of the Holy Spirit. She is motivated by her faith, love for people, and a love for bringing people together. Please welcome Khalida Lloyd. It's a wonderful day. We light this flame of our chalice every year, every service. It is our custom invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship services. Please join in singing We Light This Flame. I don't know that we have the words. You do? Good, wonderful. Let's do that as we light our chalice. At this time, our religious education director, Cynthia Ramirez, has a word for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, Lord, I'm knocking things down. I'm going to read to you today. This reminds me of my father. As I read this, it reminded me of my father. And this fight against women's health and welfare. It's not just a woman's problem, it's everybody's problem. So this book is called Franny's Father is a Feminist. This is Franny. This is Franny's father. Franny's father is a feminist. He knows that girls can do anything boys can do and raises Franny to believe she deserves all the same rights, freedoms, and opportunity he has. It's simple, really. When Franny's father was a child, he and his sister did chores around the house. His parents assigned mowing the lawn and taking out the trash, while his sister did the dishes and helped with the laundry. "Why can't I mow the lawn?" she complained. "That's a boy's chore," their dad explained. To young Franny's father, this seemed very odd. One day, he offered to swap. His sister mowed the whole lawn in no time flat. Franny's father was impressed. He always loved the smell of fresh laundry anyways. When Franny was little, she loved to sort out all tools from the workbench in the garage. Franny's father taught her all their names and also how to use them. Soon, Franny could take her bicycle apart and put it right back together, all by herself. Since then, they moved to larger vehicles. On weekends, when he isn't working, Franny's father takes her fishing. Franny baits her own hook and doesn't even gag a bit. When Franny catches more fish than her father, he tells her she reminds him of his sister when she was a little girl. When the fish aren't biting, Franny plays in the mud, catching frogs. She proudly leaves a ring of dirt in the tub. Girls should be able to do anything the boys do. Franny's father sighs, and he grabs a sponge. This is Franny's mother. She has an important job. When Franny's mother leaves her work before Franny is even out of bed, Franny's father helps her get ready for school. He is an expert hair braider and knows all the coolest styles, but he always lets Franny pick out her own clothes. Just be yourself. Sometimes when Franny's father picks her up from school, they stop by her mother's office to see the next big project she's designing. Franny feels excited when she sees her mother test the latest computer programs. She lets Franny push buttons to make things move on the screen. On the way home, Franny asks, "Whose job is more important, Mom or yours?" Franny's father smiles. "We both share the most important job in the world, and that's raising you." Franny participates in many after-school activities. Franny's father is very supportive. He is proud of Franny when she helps a teammate score the winning goal at her hockey game. Franny's father also enjoys watching her perform in ballet recitals. Sometimes he can be a little too supportive. After homework time, Franny and her parents love to watch movies together. When Franny's father tears up, she hands him a tissue. Franny knows her dad cries, and that's okay. Franny's friends love slumber parties at her house. Her father tells them campfire stories in the backyard. Between his favorite ghost stories, Franny's father slips in tales of historic women while stoking the fire. He tells them about Claire Marie Hodges, who in 1918 became the first female park ranger for the national parks. and Sally Ride, who was the first American woman to fly into space. One more story before bed, Franny always please. So he tells them of more brave young women like Ruby Bridges, the girl who broke down racial barriers between segregated elementary schools in 1960, and Malala Yousafzai, who today is paving the way for girls to be able to attend school all around the world. Franny and her friends are grateful they already are able to learn at school. When times are tough, Franny's father teaches her that you always have to stand up for what matters to you most. Sometimes they make signs. Franny's father believes in his daughter and daughters everywhere and helps her build the confidence to believe in herself. After all, that's what a feminist father does. The end.
All right, please turn to hymn 272, O Prophet, Souls of All the Years. Wait. Oh, we have the. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if we had any. 413, go down a piece. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Lord of the Lords around you everywhere. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Lord of the Lords around you everywhere.
We have a very brief reading this morning. It's from Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The belief that God will do everything for man is as untenable as the belief that man can do everything for himself. It too is based on a lack of faith. We must learn that to expect God to do everything while we do nothing is not faith, but superstition. It is time in our service when we gather your gifts to sustain this community and this community's mission in our larger community outside of our walls. We depend on your generosity and kindness to do this sacred work. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship/ or by text 504-370-2659. You can also send a check to our address. That will always be appreciated. And you can give in person this morning if someone will pass the offering bowl. If you would, okay, thank you. Thank you. This is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. I'm sorry. I wanted to thank you for your gifts and your donations. We appreciate that. This is our sacred time of joys and sorrows, our personal joys and sorrows that we choose to share. Remember, we are online. Those people who are online, if you would like to send a comment, a joy or a sorrow, please type it in the comments box and we'll try to get it. I'm not checking, but we'll see if we can. So if you would like, there are joys and sorrows cards here. Walter has some that he can pass out. If you'd raise your hand, you can write your wish on the card and it will be read as we light the candles.
Please turn to hymn 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
That's your hand. Where'd it go? We have 2 cards. If there are any others, please hold them up. Jim O'Neill writes, for all of us, it is a joy to welcome our new minister, Stacy Mitchell. It is that. Liz wrote, she has a joy, really 2 of them. She just returned from a cross-country trip to visit her daughter in Minneapolis. Pain-free is such a blessing, and we celebrate. She has a concern. She says, please keep me in your thoughts and prayers as I start a job hunt after 31 years at one company. Difficult. Does anyone have any others? Nothing. Okay. We'd light another candle for those sorrows that were not expressed, and for those joys not ready to be shared. We're a community, and know that you are never alone if you turn to us. Thank you, Howard, very much. I should light a concern that Howard is moving. Let's see. I have a longer reading this morning. I actually brought, it's from Mark. Remember Mark? Let's see, 11, 12, 25. Mark 11. And verse 12 to 25. On the next day, as they were leaving Bethany, he was hungry. This is Jesus. So when he spotted a fig tree in the distance with leaves on it, he went up to it, hoping to find something on it. But when he got up next to it, he found nothing on it but leaves. You see, it wasn't time for figs. And he reacted by saying to it, "May no one so much as taste your fruit again." And his disciples were listening. They come to Jerusalem, and he went into the temple and began throwing the vendors and customers out of the temple area. And he knocked over the currency exchange tables along with the chairs of the dove merchants. And he wouldn't even let anyone carry a container through the temple area. Then he started teaching and saying to them, "Don't the scriptures say, 'My house shall be designated a house of prayer for all people'? But you have turned it into a hideout for bandits." And the chief priests and the scholars heard this and kept looking for a way to destroy him. You see, they were afraid of him because the whole crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when it grew dark, they were leaving the city. As they were walking along early in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots up. And Peter remembered and says to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered." In response, Jesus says to them, "Have trust in God. Let me tell you, those who say to this mountain, 'Up with you and into the sea,' and do not waver in their conviction, but trust that what they say will happen, that's the way it will be. This is why I keep telling you, trust that you will receive everything you pray for and ask for, and that's the way it will turn out. And when you stand up to pray, if you are holding anything against anyone, forgive them, so your Father in heaven may forgive your transgressions also." At this time, we welcome our guest speaker, Khalida Lloyd.
Well, good morning. This has been a blessing and a unique experience for myself, and really thankful for Reverend Luck and how she shepherded this service here, not only just today, but before today. She's been a really good corresponder and preparing for this morning. Thank you, musician, our pianist, if you will, and it sounds like you've got a voice there too. And so thank you for your music. It's always a joy to make sure that that's part of a service, and it's ushered us into this very moment. And so I'm very humbled to be before you all today and be asked to be part of one of your messengers, and really a joy to be a part of the service that announces that you all found a minister. I know that it's been a journey, and the journey is concluding and rounding a corner. And so glad to be here to witness and to hear that and to know that and to meet you as well. Part of what I get to do with you this morning, like I say, is to have a conversation. And so if it's all right with you, I want to have a conversation. Is that good? Yeah, okay. All right, good. Got some shaking of heads, and good. And so I know we have some people online and on Facebook and YouTube, and so just know that you are part of this service as well, and we honor you and recognize you as well. And so let's begin with a word of prayer. Dear God, we just thank you. We thank you for yet another opportunity to be in the land of the living. We thank you for yet another time to be in your sacred place, in your spiritual opportunities to feel you, to know your presence, but most of all, to be amongst each other. We thank you for the community that is established here, dear God. I just ask, dear Lord, as I speak, dear Lord, that you will be part of what I'm saying, dear God, that it would rest and abide, that it will land on good and fertile ground in order to grow and to grow even more. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this time. Amen. All right, and so I have entitled this conversational message, remember, conversational message, Disrupting Business as Usual. And so when we think about disrupting and shaking things up, I want you to think about all the things that you have maybe disrupted in life. You have disrupted even this morning in getting here possibly, that people have disrupted you, all these different aspects of what disruption looks like. And thinking about how we disrupt business as usual. I've used for the purposes of inspiration a quote from Martin Luther King that Reverend Luck has read, and also the passage in Mark around the fig tree, that fig tree that got withered up just for not being great, if you will. And also that temple moment where Jesus gets angry, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. As I prepared for my time to speak with you today, I dug a little deeper on the creation and the history of the Unitarian Universalist Church. I would say that the Unitarian Universalist Church knows all too well about disrupting business as usual. I don't have to tell you your own history, but if you'll indulge me for just a little bit of a moment. Unitarian Universalist was formed to disrupt the business as usual of Christianity. In the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, you will find principles rooted in the worth of each other, the worth of each person, the need for justice and compassion, and the right to choose one's own beliefs. And so Unitarian Universalist is a spiritual community that brings together people from a variety of religious and non-religious backgrounds. That's disrupting. Unitarian Universalist is a business of making bold political statements like Black Lives Matter and love is love, and gosh darn it, climate change is real. So that's disrupting. So I think I'm in good company when I say that I'm amongst those who know all about disrupting. But I hope to just give a little bit more of a twist on what that means for us here in this city called New Orleans. So personally, that history of the start of the Unitarian Universalist Church resonates with me personally. I've chosen to sow into this world, and when I say sow into this world, I typically mean, what do I do for a living? And so if I have conversations with people, I'm getting to know people, at some point I'll say, how do you sow into this world? And then they might look at me like, what are you talking about? And I just translate it and say, what do you do for a living? What takes up your time? And so for me, it's what you sow into this world. And so as I am sowing into this world, I am by trade an attorney. And I've chosen not to practice law and have dedicated my time to building and leading a faith-based racial reconciliation nonprofit called Mission Reconcile, and to lead as a community organizer with Together New Orleans. So choosing to start and lead a nonprofit and to practice in community organizing is disrupting my personal life. I like being an attorney. I enjoy understanding the law. I like figuring out ways to make it better. I like helping people to gain access to the legal system. And I would be remiss not to say that I like the job security and the economic upward mobility of the profession. However, when God calls you to a thing, you get to be obedient. And I believe that means that it is greater on the other side. And when I see people from all walks of life coming together with a strategy in unity and being able to work together and then see the fruits of their labor, I think that's a greater reward as well. And that's why I'm invested in community organizing. And so I am recognizing that I am disrupting business as usual in my personal life and how I choose to spend my time and what I quote unquote do for a living. As I explored the scripture, Mark 11, a little bit more, I wondered, what does the fig tree do for a living? What was the fig tree's purpose? Well, for Jesus, its purpose was for living was to produce figs, for people to eat when they're hungry and to quench their hunger. And it was not producing figs at this moment. What baffles me, though, about Jesus' disappointment and just disdain for this fig tree not producing figs is that it wasn't even the season for figs to be produced. And so, Jesus, why are you getting mad, though? It's not even the season. But I did a little bit more research on what produces figs, or when figs are supposed to be produced. And when there's a lot of leaves on the tree, there's supposed to be figs. And the scripture says that there were a lot of leaves. And so as Jesus approaches this fig tree, seeing all these leaves, but no figs, he decides to curse that tree. I'll talk a little bit more about what he teaches from that in a little bit. But Jesus was not concerned about the season of when these figs needed to produce. He was more concerned about what the fig tree was not producing, and that was figs. So never mind what season it is. The question is, what are you purposed to produce as a person of faith worshiping in a city like New Orleans? And perhaps the question is, are you producing it? Never mind my law degree and these 4 licenses that I worked tirelessly for. The question I ask myself is, what am I purposed to do here in New Orleans? So I ask you, what is your never mind? What is your never mind that whatever the season is, what are you purposed to do in this very moment? When I think about the other scriptures in Mark, Jesus was a disruptor. Jesus pushed the status quo and how things were usually done every single place he went. Jesus disrupted this fig tree because it wasn't producing fruit. Jesus disrupted the money changers in the temple because they weren't doing the Lord's business, if you will. And Jesus' action in the temple, I truly do believe, is one of the most significant of his disruptions. This was what you call, and what I like to call, righteous indignation. This is how Jesus acted in the temple. Jesus was clear about what he needed to be done, and he took authority and did it. Righteous indignation is the spiritual word for getting angry. And Jesus got angry. But a better word to say is righteous indignation. And so the question is, when was the last time you may have exhibited righteous indignation about anything? Was it your drive here? Was it waking up this morning? Was it an issue or a cause? Was it an injustice against someone else? Was it an injustice against you? When was the last time that you got righteously indignant, and what the aggravation of that was? And the question is, what about that got you righteously indignant? You know, what about that caused you to stir up your anger? And what are you disrupting in that moment? And Jesus is an example of this righteous indignation, and this anger is something that we need to do when we see a present reason to be in this fashion, in this form. And his example in the temple is a prime example of that. So what does Jesus cursing the fig tree and flipping tables in the temple have to do with you and I? As people of faith, we are called to disrupt the status quo and the way things are done. We get to disrupt business as usual. I recently watched a documentary series called Women in the Movement, or Women of the Movement, I think it's what it's called. And it's highlighting Mamie Till, which is Emmett Till's mother. And it talks about the story of their life together, and it goes through the incident and just how she evolved as a mother, facing the death and the killing and the murder of her son during that time. And I truly believe that she has been known to have launched the civil rights movement because of her actions, because of her righteous indignation about what happened around her son, was a catalyst to the civil rights movement. She chose to show her son's marred body and face to the whole entire world, and she decided to go public. And so never mind the fact that she needed to, quote unquote, respect her son's body. Never mind that she was being faced with death threats because she was publicly speaking. She decided to be a disruptor. And that disruptor was a catalyst to the civil rights movement. Together New Orleans, the organization that I work with and organize with, was created at its core to disrupt business as usual here in New Orleans. It's a vehicle that it's a vehicle to be able to actually do that, actually disrupt business as usual. It takes power and authority to get that done. And Jesus had that same power and authority over that fig tree, and he invites us with that same power and authority. And he also had the same power and authority to declare that his Father's house was going to be a place of worship and not of a place to exchange money. And I truly believe that we too have that same power of authority when we're working together in unity and in unison, for the betterment from not only ourselves, but most importantly, our neighbors, and for the city ultimately of New Orleans. And that is the core of Together New Orleans and what it means to come together in order to do the work and identify issues to be able to work on. So the question to me is, okay, how do we get this done? You know, Jesus gets to curse the fig tree and see the results. He gets to go into the temple and flip tables and do his authority and his power. I believe the way we get this done is in partnership with God and with each other. And so it's not with one another as disruptors today. And so it's not so much to say that it's all on God and nothing is on us. It's not to say that it's all on us and nothing is on God, but it's this partnership that we get to move into and lean into as well. After the disciples passed that fig tree, they noticed the effect of the fig tree. It was dried up. Jesus gives the lesson that if you should pray for absolutely everything, small or large, the job will be done. He uses the fig tree example as an opportunity to say that you get to trust. You get to trust in my power, in my authority, and if you yourself believe in that power and authority and trust it itself, anything will be done for you. You can cast the mountain out. And so it's a combination of God's work as well as our work that gets things done. It's this partnership. And so we can't always say, again, that it's all on God, and we can't say that it's all on us. Martin Luther King's quote, for me, epitomizes this and highlights that this partnership is what we have to have in order to move into this power and this authority that I believe God has given us. The belief that God can do everything for man is as untenable as the belief that man can do everything for himself. It too is based on a lack of faith. We must learn that to expect God to do everything while we do nothing is not faith, but superstition. And this is the bedrock of what we get to do and what we get to do in partnership with God. We can only do so much on our own and in unison with one another, but because of our faith, it invites us to do even more. And so this partnership with God gets to be like a dance, right? Where we get to move in unison with God moving in unison with us. And so once we're in unity with one another, God can then step in to do and get the job done. And so the work of doing is truly in partnership with God. It's not all on God and it's not all on us. We are God's hands and feet, is what my grandmother likes to say. God needs us just as much as we need God. And in partnership with him, we're able to acknowledge the need of one another to get things done and also the need of God to get things done. I'm choosing to be a disruptor as an organizer, and the opportunity to work with members at CCUU is part of that disruption. I get to decide how we are working together, but you also get to decide how we get to work together, how we get to disrupt this city of New Orleans in a really amazing way that partners with God and partners with one another. So together, we get to disrupt and do things like figure out how we keep our lights on after a disaster and move our city towards solar with the solution around the community lighthouse, where there's solar battery backup on most congregations across the city in order to provide opportunities and services after a disaster. We get to disrupt together, creating a demand for weatherization of homes so our neighbors can lower their utility bills and the cost burden of that here in this city, and to create high-earning jobs with an industry that is a something billion-dollar industry, weatherization. And so we get to disrupt that by creating solutions around that demand. We also get to disrupt together how we solve and identify the social determinants of health in our neighborhoods and change healthcare outcomes for our neighbors. How do we really look at not just healthcare access, but also the social determinatives of healthcare that we know are really true and evident, and connect that to our neighbors? We get to disrupt that together. We get to disrupt together identifying sustainable solutions to violence that doesn't recreate or re-enable our mass incarceration system. We get to sit down, talk with one another, and connect and say, how do we come up with solutions that treats the situation around our violence, but doesn't create the history that we know is not faithful to our brothers and to our sisters? How do we come up with those solutions together? How do we disrupt that thinking? We can also disrupt together being able to build relationships and trust with one another, to be able to identify and work on winnable issues that affect our neighbors. Things that we are able to be in relationship with one another, trust with one another, and be able to connect with one another and say, we are going to win this, we are going to work on this together, and we are going to win it together as well, for our neighbors and for our community and ultimately for our city. And so, this concept of being able to, one, be a disruptor is what I want to agitate you to this morning. What are you disrupting? Who are you disrupting? How are you being a disruptor within your personal lives, on your jobs, within your community, within your church, within the city, ultimately, of New Orleans? And how can you be a disruptor in partnership, not only with God, but with each other? And so the question is, how do we get to disrupt? How do we get to shake things up? How do we get to change the course of someone's day because we are in righteous indignation about something for someone else or for ourselves? And so this concept of righteous indignation, this concept of being able to be a disruptor and being able to be a catalyst and a movement is what I want to call us to. call us to being able to be a change within a city, to be a lighthouse within a city, but ultimately to be that disruptor. And so the question I leave with you is, what will you disrupt so that is no longer business as usual in the city of New Orleans? Thank you.
As the end of our service draws to an end, we traditionally extinguish the chalice, and we're using the words in 456, if you'd like to, in the readings in the back of the hymnal, 456. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, my friends.